Welcome to Recovery APN. This is obviously a special one. We typically don't have an audience, so I just want to say thank you to everyone who stayed. Thank you for everyone who came this weekend, especially the alumni. The alumni community is very important to APN. We value the relationships that we have with you guys, and we hope to continue to do this every year. To give you some insight about this podcast, Andy and I have the opportunity to talk to alumni about their journey consisting of what brought them to APN. You know, what were they struggling with before, how they found APN, what their experience was like at APN. You know, were there certain things they learned, certain relationships that they formed here, whether it be with staff or other clients, and what their life is like now. For those familiar with AA or NA or any of those support groups, it's almost like they're sharing their story. And it's interesting because, you know, you may know someone or hear their name or sound familiar, but you don't really know them until they kind of open up and get vulnerable. So this podcast gives, you know, us the opportunity to talk to our alumni and for them to get vulnerable. Because at the end of the day, when someone gets vulnerable, it allows others to learn from them. Something that I've always learned in my recovery is to ask for help and open my ears and learn from other people that have gone through this journey before. And so, you know, speaking on behalf of Andy and I, it gives me great passion to interview and talk to our alumni because I get to learn from them and maybe something I didn't know about that. And also for other people to listen to this. We have the opportunity to use our platform on Spotify, the website, YouTube, all these different things to share their amazing stories so that if, whether it be an APN client or a prospective client or someone that's just struggling right now, to give them the opportunity to listen to this and get inspired. So that's just a little bit about us. We've done, I don't know how many episodes?
About 12.
About 12, consisting from, you know, my journey, Andy's journey, about 9 other alumni, and all over mental health, substance abuse, and then we just released a family episode. The family episode was pretty unique. It gave the perspective of what their journey was with a loved one that was going through their active addiction. So I know it's always hard for those family members, and something that we realized was it's equally as hard for them.
Yeah. And to piggyback on what Dan said, like me and Dan have the best job, we feel like, at APM, because we get to, you know, we talk to our alumni clients or our clients that are now alumni and highlight their successes. And the people that engage with us are usually super grateful about recovery and super grateful about APN. And for us to come on this pod and then, you know, highlight that is outstanding. And Dan talked about like the power in the message, right, in the story. And I'm going to say this term, I feel like wrong, but we're like an anecdotal society. Got it. Home run. And but the power is from one, you know, whether it's alcoholic or addict or mental health, you know, someone that's suffering from that, when they sit down and they sit down with another person that's suffering with something similar to them, and they tell their story to each other, and the power's in the brokenness. Right? We're you know, like that's our common peril. You know, like we come in broken. And then when we share that, there's hope at that, right? And we get to highlight that here, and we're excited for this episode. It's been again, our producer tells us not to talk about the time period because then it doesn't age well. But we had our holiday alumni this weekend outing, and it's been outstanding. And we're going to do it again next year, and maybe in a summer event too. So we're fired up, and we love our APN alums. So we want to highlight that. My bad, Keith. But we're excited to kind of dig into this podcast with Ashley and hear her story. But Dan, shout out for your intro. Like that was, killed it, pal. That was like, you went for like 5 minutes straight there. I wanted to talk. I was getting a little upset.
Yeah, I was just giving some background.
You did great, pal.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, without further ado, Ashley, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
How's it been coming back to the lodge?
Oh my gosh, it's been excitement overload, sensory overload, I should say. I may cry, so just forewarning. Very emotional. That's how this has all affected me, seeing all the staff, and I even ran back to the kitchen staff, and I was like, remember me? I was a big pain in the ass who wanted all the gluten-free stuff, and they just like were super excited to see me, and seeing the RAs. It's just been a wonderful experience, and meeting other alumni, of course, bringing my husband to share the experience. And I told him, I want you to see where all the magic happened, and huge shout out to my husband, who's been here by my side since day one.
Yeah, that's amazing. One thing that I heard, it's funny you say that. One thing I heard today about, and I overheard alumni talking about it, was how happy they were to be back. And I sat there and I was just like, in what world are people happy to be back in like the rehab they
Go
went
back to
to?
rehab.
Right?
Let's go.
And you're sitting there and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you were either forced to come, your significant other was like,
intervention,
that, like and I was like, and I have that feeling too. It's always very surreal for me to come back every time, because I'm an alumni also, and I just sit here and it's always grateful, but I also remember where I came from. I remember walking through those doors and how broken I was, and it's like almost like in AA meetings when they say like, remember your last drink,
right?
And like that's what happens to me like when I walk through those doors. But yeah, I guess the first question I would ask is, obviously there was something that was leading up to you coming to APN, or kind of admitting defeat and asking for help. So I guess if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing that experience.
Oh, it's a big one. I'll try to keep it to key points, but I've been struggling for a long time. This is not my first rodeo. APN's my third, and it had got to a point where I was hiding everything, like where I was going, who I was talking to, where my money was going. And I even had a little refrigerator that I would hide things in. It was just the hiding and the lying to my husband. And it just got so bad, and the chaos was overwhelming, to the point where I hate to get so morbid, but it's a part of my story. I was at the end of it. I wanted to take my life. It was done. Like, I had nowhere else to go. And there was something inside of me. There is a God in my life that perpetuated me to pick up that phone. And I have family, thankfully, who are in recovery, who are part of this APN family, that I didn't know existed at this point, right? And I called one of my family members, and I said, I don't know what to do. Like, I am at my wit's end. Help me. And he said, do you have insurance? Do you got this amount of cash? Let's go. I was literally on a plane the next day, took 2 flights because I was sitting at the bar. And I missed 2 flights. And one of my family members texts me, and he goes, you got to get on that fucking plane. And sure enough, I shaped my ass up. I got on the plane, and I ended up here. I'm from Arizona, so leaving Arizona was a big step. And I think that's a huge part of my success, was actually leaving home, getting out of my environment, coming here. I went to a detox center in Denver, and the rest is really a beautiful journey from there.
Well, I like the aspect of the surrender, right? They say spirituality enters in through the wound, right? And nobody wants to come to rehab because life's just great. Hey, everything, I'm killing it, right? Usually it's the last house on the block, right? Like, I have no other options internally.
Right.
And we have that feeling of, whether it's suicidal thoughts or just depression and anxiety. And it's like our life is like a house of cards, and it's held together by barely held together, right? And how did you feel in that surrender moment when you finally got on the plane? And you let your guard down and hey, I don't have to keep lying anymore on the journey, not even while you're to the door here.
I told you I was drinking at the airport, and I remember telling the bartenders, I'm like, these are my last drinks. I'm going to rehab. And I didn't know it at that time, but those were my last drinks. And and I have to tell the story. If this person is listening, I hope she is. I thank her every day. She is part of my journey. It was a woman at the bar. My husband had cut all the credit cards off because he knew what I was doing at the bar, and rightfully so. So I couldn't pay for my bar tab. And the bartender's like, your card's not going through. I'm like, what do you mean my fucking card's not going through? Like, it run it again. And she grabs my hands and she goes, I heard you're going to rehab. And she goes, I paid for your tab. She goes, I want you to get on that plane.
Wow.
And I hope you come back a different person. And I think about her
Wow.
quite often. And when I was coming through the Denver airport and on my way in here, coming to see you guys, I was like, I don't even remember where I was at, what flight I took, but so I would never find her again. Maybe I do cross paths with her, but I thank her every day because, you know, I don't even remember the question was, but I thought that was a really cool part of my story.
No, it is. I find it very entertaining.
Yeah. So there's so many entertaining aspects of my journey, like before, during, now.
But like, what an angel! Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's unbelievable. It's so powerful.
And, you know, throughout all of this, I've had little, you know, we call them God shots, little God shots throughout. You know, I could have been arrested, right? Like, I think, being as drunk as I was and being a flight risk, not being able to get on that plane. So I'm just thankful I was able to and get here safely.
I guess did you call Cam or Theron?
Shout
I
out
called,
Cam and Turk.
yeah, shout out to my cousins. I didn't know if I could say their names.
No,
so
yeah,
that's
they're cool.
yeah. I actually called Theron. He's my older cousin. And I ended up talking to both of them throughout the entire time.
I was just
and then,
curious who you felt more comfortable with.
yeah, I mean, I feel comfortable with both of them, but I think at the time, I don't remember. I was so wasted that I just was like, just call Theron. And he's the older one of the two, right?
Correct.
And whether he's more responsible or not, I don't know. I think they would argue with that. So,
They would.
yeah, but I called Theron and I remember Cam taking over everything. And I was in detox and I was broken. I was absolutely broken. I didn't know if I was going to come home to a husband, if I was going to come home to a job, come home to a family. Like, I have 3 beautiful dogs at home, and I had finally surrendered and I said, you know, I'm here for myself. Whatever's at home, I got to just leave it at the door. And I remember Cam and Theron, they came, my 2 beautiful cousins. They're so handsome. I love them dearly. And they came to, I was over in the quarantining. I don't know if they have that anymore, but I didn't have my COVID shot, so they had to quarantine me for 7 days. And they came and they knocked on my door, and I was just, you know, all sad and broken. And I just was like, so excited to see family, you know, and like someone does love me, and not that everyone was just done with my shit,
Sure.
right? And
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Something that like I can relate to is like the support that you had. People, you know, even when you were at the worst of your worst, they were still, family members were still picking up your phone calls to get you into treatment. Your husband was still there, you know, supporting you. And it's, you know, not everyone has that luxury. And, you know, it's obviously as difficult. I'm sure, you know, I just had the opportunity to talk to my parents about, you know, their journey. And so I look at it with a different lens now and says like, wow, like they had it just as bad as I did, right? Like, yes, I was going through maybe like physical withdrawals or that like active addiction, but it's interesting to hear like how they struggled, right? And I could only imagine, you know, from your husband's perspective, but like he was still there to support you. And it's always nice to look back and appreciate those things because, you know, not everyone has that.
right. And a huge part of my support is my mother. I'm the only child from her. She was there for Jason, you know, when I had left to come to APN, and they have always been close. We're all very close, and I adore that. I think it's very healthy. But, you know, my mom went to Al-Anon meetings with Jason, and, you know, they cried together and they supported each other while I was away. And, you know, it's just, I think it's so important. And my mom, Dustin was talking earlier on the podcast about, you know, someone you can pick up the phone, 5 people, and my mom is always number one. Jason is always, he's so busy. I don't like to stress him out, but my mom, not that you don't understand Jason, but he does. It's just my mom has been my best friend through this since I knew how to talk and knew what friends were. My mom has always been there, and she's been my rock. And, you know, Thanksgiving, Dustin was talking about this too, you know, we have that blip in the brain for just one moment. Oh yeah, a drink would be a good idea right now. And Thanksgiving, I had gone to the store, and I have Bug as a service dog, and I have her for a reason because she allows me to stay focused, and not only the anxiety and panic attacks that I have, not so much anymore because I don't drink. Imagine that. But yeah, I was in Sprouts, and I thought just for that one moment, oh, a bottle of wine sounds really good right now on Thanksgiving, just a couple weeks ago. And I looked at Bug and no, it doesn't. Nope, I'm here for stuffing and whatever I was there for. And got in the car, I picked up the phone, I called my mom, I go, I had a moment. I had one of those thoughts. And it's okay to have, I heard Dustin say, it's okay to have, it's normal. If you didn't, it wouldn't. And it was just, it was relieving to hear Dustin say that, because I sometimes often question myself, are those normal? Am I a bad person? And, am I really living sobriety if I have those blips in the brain? But it's normal. And so Dustin says, and he knows it all, right? So
there's a word that comes up in 12-step recovery a lot, and I think people sometimes use it incorrectly, but we hear insanity a lot, right? And people start telling their stories about, oh, I did this and I robbed that, or whatever their craziness is. But that's not what they're referring to. They're talking about the thought that precedes the first drink, right? And the thought is that this time it's going to be different. Yeah. And this time I can handle it better, right? And when we're not doing well, that thought comes in, and that thought then holds it down, and I go and I drink.
Right.
But when we're working on ourselves and we're doing better, that thought comes in, and then that thought exits, right? When it's kind of what we talked about, and we have the tools to get through that first thought, right? So then that insanity gets away, and it doesn't then run my life. So it's cool to hear you kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I guess before we get into kind of your experience at APN, there's one other thing that you said that was like super important. You realized when you were coming in, you had to do it for yourself. And I think a lot of people, and again, I went to treatment 3 times myself, and the first 2 were for others.
Yeah.
And the only thing that it did for me was like cause resentments. I got pissed off at my mom, my dad, my brother, sister, whomever that was trying to like support me and help me. Like, I'm only going for you, and I'm gonna prove to you it doesn't work. And I made up I found every little reason. I found like a little thing to blame on everything else but myself for just not being able to look myself in the mirror.
Sure.
And I think that the only way you get better is when you do it for yourself, when you look in the mirror and accept where you're at in life and know that like it's going to get better if I work hard and I prove myself, I do it for myself. And so I think like I just want to acknowledge that in your story because I think that's very important.
Yeah, shout out, Ash.
Yeah, thank you. Shout out to me. No, and with that, that comes with the boundaries, right? Putting yourself first and putting yourself in a vulnerable situation. Also, what Dustin and Lana were talking about, so much of what you guys talked about today just really resonated and coincides, is very parallel with my journey. And, if I don't want to do, if I don't feel comfortable doing something, because of course I want to do this, I want to be there and be included, but if I know it's going to present a hazard to my sobriety, I am in that position now. I'm like, I come first. I need to be selfish. I need to take a step back. I'm not going, and I don't need an explanation to everybody. It's not necessary. I need to put myself first. And maybe in a year, in so long, I'll be able to do these things. And it just takes this time to create a safe space and kind of like, I do CrossFit, so I have calluses. You have to create those calluses on your body and that sobriety, right? So that way, when you go into these situations in the long run, that you're prepped, you're prepared. You can actually do it. Another thing I wanted to talk about real quick, and then I'll let you run the show. I'm so sorry.
No, we love it. Take over. Take over.
Is our exit plans. If you do put yourself in a vulnerable situation, always have that exit plan. I drive now. If my husband and I have to drive separately, because I'm not going to pull him away from fun, I'm going to drive. I bring Bug. I have deterrent. I have something to focus on. And I'll leave 2 hours early. A lot of what Dustin and Lana were saying, I'm just going to keep repeating. A lot of what you guys are saying really resonated because preparing yourself and being proactive in situations, this sounds like a lot, but in the end, it's so much easier than being drunk, you know,
Having
and
a
having
plan,
to deal with the whole repercussions of having to apologize and having to pick up the pieces. It's just, sobriety is so much easier.
It's true. Like, I don't know. I always say that, like, I don't wake up with those like cringe moments anymore.
Right?
Like, you know, when you go out and you like fucked up and you forget
Yeah.
what you
What
do.
did I do?
And then you think about it and you're like, oh, like I said this to this person. I was doing this. Like,
Check
I
the
can't
phone
believe that.
for text messages.
Yeah. You, like, go
or
through,
the Facebook and the Instagram.
And like you just you just walk into a room and like you're authentic.
Right.
And it's like you leave and it's like, all right, if they don't like me, like screw them. Like that's just who I am.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your experience at APN.
Oh man. It was beautiful, right? Like I hit the ground running, and I can say that confidently. I was talking to Debbie. She was the DBT, but now she does a lot of the art classes now. But and I think Brandy could advocate for me as well. I don't know if I can say names. Can I?
You're good.
Okay. We can edit those later.
Yeah.
We love a good shout out.
Yeah, we love the shout out.
I mean, those are two people that have really, really made an impact on my life after APN. I showed up to every class. I was present. I brought my DBT book, even though it was a pain in my ass, that class. Like that class was hard for me. Like I overthink things, and I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. I have ADHD, and it's just like, oh my God, slow down, draw pictures, you know? And I took the time out to, you know, bring Debbie aside. I was like, can you break this down in layman's terms for me? Because it's not, I don't understand. You know, I really took an interest in every class. Even with art, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing art class? I don't like art. Like I like to be out and active and running and, you know, out hiking and playing with dogs. So, I took up knitting when I was here, and I used to do that in high school. And, you know, I did some paintings, and it was just, I embraced every aspect. We got a crew together. One of the other members is here, clients is here. I was so glad to see him. Actually, we went on hikes every morning at 6 a.m. And, you know, we had a crew. We had a big crew every morning at 6 a.m. And it was just wonderful. And what else did we do? One thing that actually Cam and Jeremy had come down. They're like, we got to get these kids out of here, because it was during the COVID, and we went up to the big house and we went star watching, and we made s'mores, and we saw some awesome animals up there. It's just every part I just took in, and that huge the part of being mindful and finding who you are and that authentic self is just like, holy crap. Like there was so much to take in, but I really embraced it all. And I think it's really important to, when you get here, or any recovery place that you go to, I strongly advocate for ABN, I'm like their biggest cheerleader. You drop everything at the door, you know, just be vulnerable and be willing, be open, and be honest with yourself. And that's really what I did, because what I was doing was not working. Yeah. So I'm like, help me, tell me what to do. I'll do anything at this point.
Yeah, that willingness, right? When we come in, we have that gift of desperation and we do stuff. But I want you to highlight, you kind of started to a little bit, and just talk more about it, is that the peer relationships, right? Mm-hmm. I know for me in my journey, like I got these lifelong friends, and then when I went and I got sober at rehab, and I knew somebody 45 or 60 days, I felt closer to those guys than I did these my lifelong buddies, some of them, right? So because we're so vulnerable and we're so broken, right? And we bond in that. So can you kind of talk a little bit about some of your peer relationships, and do you still maintain that relationship and those contacts? Yeah,
absolutely. A few of them are here, and I want to not just highlight while I was here at APN. I'm still involved in the aftercare program at APN. The Zoom, the Living Sober. I still do family therapy with my husband. I have a personal therapist, and through these Zooms, the Living Sober, I've met some wonderful people, and it's amazing to see their faces here. I've seen them on the Zoom, but I haven't met them in person, and it's just great to see them. We reconnected, somebody who's here right now, and we reconnected, and like, holy crap, we forgot to keep in contact, but we're both doing well, which is great, and we're going to keep in contact. But yes, I'm on a couple group chats with some previous clients here, and some that live in Maryland, live here in Denver, and another guy who was in LA, and now he's just traveling the US to find his spot. So I absolutely do. Actually, one of your previous clients, I actually spoke to her today, and we can talk about that later. But yeah, so I talk to a lot of people, and Instagram and Facebook make it so easy to follow the stories and then just check in and say hi. So picking up the phone is easy, and being on the Zoom calls and checking in on the living sober, which I strongly advise for everyone to do if you're not super into AA. Sorry, Andy. We
You're
talked
right.
about this earlier, but or it wasn't. Yeah, it was you, Andy. So yeah, so it's been beautiful to keep connection and seeing what they're doing, and if they're having a bad day, they can pick up the phone, because we do have similar issues. I don't like to call them. Someone would probably kill me for saying issues, but we struggle with the same things.
Yeah.
And where it may not be easy for me to pick up the phone and call my husband, I could pick up the phone and call somebody else that's in the APN family, and
Sure.
they understand completely, right? So it's
This was kind of brought up in Lana when Lana was talking to Dustin. The topic was the topic was relapse, and how a lot of clients will come to APN, relapse and come back to APN.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big and they were talking to each other about why are they coming back? Why come back to APN? And I think a lot of the reason is the community. I think a lot is based off of the relationships they form, the way, how comfortable they feel in this facility. I think how the employees treat them.
Mm-hmm.
I think therapists at APN don't give themselves enough credit on the impact they have on their clients' lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's interesting is that, and Dustin said it too, and he said it to me one time. He's like, I just needed to, go out there and test the waters a little bit more before, because I needed like a deeper,
More evidence.
Yeah, I needed more evidence that I was, an addict. But for whatever reason, I knew that I needed to come back to work with Dustin because of the relationship that we built, the trust that I had in him. I knew that it was me, not him. And I knew he was the right person for me. And I think that goes along with the community too, right? You come in and you feel amongst these are your people. And I think APN does a tremendous job of creating that community. You walk in, and I think we've seen this with the graduation meetings when people are discharging. It could be an individual's first day, but they're right in front at the graduation meeting, participating, not knowing anyone,
Feeling part of it. That
Yeah.
point.
Right.
Yeah.
and it's just it's very interesting. I guess another piece of I'm curious to know, what was it like working with your therapist at APN? What was your relationship like there?
She was amazing. I still talk to her she's no longer here, and I still talk to her through a social media platform, and she ended up moving to Arizona, actually. And at that time, I was going through a lot of therapist changes here at APN. I was like, well, I don't want to keep changing at APN. And so I reached out to her, and I was ready to make that jump. And then Rebecca came along, and oh my God, she is amazing. Probably the best therapist I have ever had in the 36 years of, I'm 36 years old. I've been doing therapy for 36 years, but I think I've been doing it since I was 6 years old. So in the last 30 years of therapy that I've had, it's somebody, and she's all the way out in New York, man. And who would have thunk that on a Zoom call you could actually establish this relationship with somebody who calls you out on your bullshit, who, picks you up when you've got that shame and guilt. We had a huge conversation about it this last week. She's like, how long are you going to beat yourself up over that? And she's like, recognize those small wins. And I don't know. She's just amazing. There's no bullshit. I don't feel uncomfortable in that awkward, therapist feeling. She's super cool and laid back, and that's what I need. I was a gymnast growing up, so that constructive criticism, I need that. I don't want you're gonna be okay. Like, no, pick your ass up, try again. You're gonna be fine. Remember what you did last time. Remember what worked. Remember what didn't, and move on.
I had a quick question. So in Therapy Unboxed in part 1, right, with Lana and Dustin, they highlighted a lot of things, but one thing was and I think you spoke about this briefly, but the discharge plan. Like, how was, when you were leaving APN, and we'll get back into some things there, what was your plan? Did you meet that plan, and how did that aspect, like the first 48 hours or the first week out of APN?
Holy shit! I'm so glad you asked that question, because
shout out me.
This is gonna be impressive. I impressed myself too with this, because I didn't. The first time they were going to discharge me, I cried, and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't go yet. I'm not ready. And thankfully, I got an extension, and I was able to stay here for longer. So I had some more time to prepare that exit plan, because I can't stay here forever. Yes, I would love to, but that's not realistic. So I know what work was going to look like when I went back. I found a passion of mine while I was here at APN with the NFL players that come through here. One of the NFL players said, you'd be really good at CrossFit. So my plan was find a CrossFit gym in my local area, which I did. I was there the next day, doing a consultation with the coach, signed up, and I was there the very next day. I literally took APN's plan from the moment I woke up, getting my coffee, getting my green drink, going to the gym. The classes that we went to was my work schedule, and then going home and doing my winding down. Well, that kind of flip-flop. My workout goes after work, because I start work at that point. It was 5:30 in the morning. So, but to this day, my husband can advocate to this, I make my green drink. I have a juicer. I make it every week. I meal prep. I try to. Well, my husband meal preps. I don't. I'm a horrible cook. So God bless him. He always makes sure that you got your lunches, and he's like, what do you want this week? And we're a team. We do it together. And so I literally took the APN schedule and routine, and I transplanted it into Arizona, into my home. And then as I became more comfortable being home and having like the real life surroundings, I started adding little things here and there. I think they were talking about, do you recommend going down that street the first week? I didn't go to the grocery store for, I don't even know how long. He's like, well, why don't you go to the grocery store? Because that liquor aisle's right there, right when you walk in. And that's my first, but yeah, and the other key thing, I'm a talker, obviously you can tell, and I make friends wherever I go, so all the people at the stores know who I am. So I made a point to let the guy know who I check out with all the time, I don't drink anymore, and the CVS lady, Tish, she's amazing. She loves Bug. It's so sweet. I told her, I don't drink anymore. I'm not going to buy alcohol. And she goes, I'm going to hold you to that. And so my sobriety is not a secret to anybody in my life. I post it on my social media all the time. I let everybody know. And I think that holds me accountable. I'm not saying that works for everybody, but holds me accountable. But yeah, so like I did at APN, I hit the ground running. I went home and I hit the ground running. And yes, I hit some walls. It wasn't easy.
Sure.
But it worked for me. The structure here and the structure in transplanting that structure back home.
Love that.
Yeah, I think a big piece of what some individuals struggle with is the stigma of hiding who you are. Regardless if you're willing to get sober, it's like you kind of hide from admitting to being an addict or an alcoholic, or from the mental health piece, that you have serious trauma, that you have PTSD. Mm-hmm. But to be able to communicate that and be proud of it is incredible. And I always for me, when I obviously I'm always going to cheer for that person because of the position I am, but I was like that at a young age too. I always when someone works hard at something, they should be proud of it.
Yeah. And
getting sober is not easy. So to walk around and have it on your chest, to talk about it with the CVS person or whomever, like if you're comfortable, you should, because like it's something that you work on every single day.
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
It's
right.
not.
And it's to accomplish that, to put your head on the pillow and be like, I didn't pick up a drink today.
Yeah.
Didn't pick up a drug. It's like something you should shout from like the house if you wanted to.
100%. And with that, Dan, it's because I make it so public. And I mentioned before, I'm huge into CrossFit. I post, and if I'm having a bad day and I don't feel like going to the gym, I just get in the car. That's the first step. Just get in the car and get to the gym, and it's all uphill from there, right? I post small videos, like look where I'm at today and look where it was. Like, oh, gross! Like a year and a half ago, like that's nasty. So I've gained more followers and more friends friends who I probably pissed off in the past, and they're like, "Holy crap, Ashley! Like you are an inspiration. Like I never once thought I would be an inspiration. Like that is weird. Like that's so incredible. It's such an incredible feeling, and because I've made it so public, and I told you today, I was like, I posted on my Instagram today, hey, tune in live to our podcast today. And Dan's like, it's not going to be airing for 2 weeks. I'm like, and then I posted again, just kidding, like come back in 2 weeks. But, I make that known. And I think it's important for me, like I said, to hold myself accountable. My husband even reposts all my stuff, and they are like, holy shit, your wife's in really good shape. Like she could kick your ass now, and it's just a really cool feeling to know that I can inspire others. Because the question you asked Dustin, what would you do? What would you like to be most known for leaving?
I didn't ask that. I just gave Andy the
okay.
note,
Well, whoever did, right?
Just for the record.
To inspire someone, as easy as it is, for someone to actually reach out like I did. Like I could have not made it to the next day. And for me to be able to pick up the phone and have somebody I could call, like, is huge. And if I can do that for some, like Theron saved my life. If he knows it or not, he probably does. He's like, whatever. But
no, I think Theron, knowing Theron how I know him, I think like he would be like touched to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't think he would throw it, whatever.
What if he didn't answer the phone?
Right, yeah.
And so now to this day, I pick up the phone. I used to not to because, I'm drunk. You don't care who's calling, whatever. But if I could inspire somebody just for one moment, or just to think that I'm cool for one moment, because I was not cool back in the day, it's just so cool to know.
Yeah, like altruism and like being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't realize until you're past it, right? How impactful and important it is to us, right? But being helpful, I think, again, it was talked about on Therapy Unboxed, like being honored to be helpful, and like, and we can be helpful in so many different ways, right? Hey, posting, right? You don't know who you're helping, but you know you're helping, right?
Yeah.
And how cool is that? And if that's what if you're comfortable in that and that's what you want to do, you're helping people every day because you're inspiring somebody to maybe work on themselves or go to the gym, or if you're just sitting down one-on-one, kind of like your cousin, right, Theron did with you, right? So there's all these different ways for us to be helpful, and it feeds the soul, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, I have to hop in here for a second. I wasn't intending to speak on this episode.
Shout out, Keith.
But I think it needs to be acknowledged, as much as this podcast is the brainchild of Dan and Andy, and certainly Dan's enthusiasm. Previously, Ashley had done a testimonial with us, and when we were conceptualizing this podcast as a thing, her testimonial played a big part in like, that was so powerful, we should do that. So if you're hoping to inspire people, congratulations. You're at the end of a season 1 inspired by you.
That's so crazy to think that, And I appreciate you and for even thinking of me, right? When Dan called me, it's my mother's surprise. She would kill me if I tell you what age she was, but it's her surprise birthday that I planned this weekend tonight, and those are the things we do in sobriety. You'll drop anything and everything. I mean, so I did. I told Dan I'm going to make it work. I'll be there. And so I encourage anybody and she would not hate me for it. Like, she didn't know it was happening at the time, her birthday, but
I think you said your mom would want me here doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. She would move. She would not judge me. She would not be sad. She's not a selfish person like that. So, yeah.
I think she's just proud of you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's just so happy to have her daughter back. Like, we have crying moments, and she never thought this day would come. Like, it got that bad where she had lost all hope. So, if I could, just say one thing to anybody who's struggling, who's listening to this right now, like, don't lose hope. The road is not at the end. I once thought it was, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I know that's super cliche, but I thought I was going to lose my husband. I'm one of the lucky ones who didn't. I didn't lose my family or closest friends, and I've just been blessed that people actually believe in me.
Yeah.
But
There's something again, and it goes around in the 12-step recovery scene, and people talk about, like, hey, I got a new job, or I got my husband or my wife or this, or I get money, and in recovery is great. But like a lot of times in recovery, they talk about new things that we've never experienced, right? This new peace and this new freedom and this new happiness and helpfulness, right? And I think hearing you describe it, like, we don't want our old life recaptured. When we come into this, we end up getting new things, and it's so powerful. And then that ends up then we almost seek that the way we were seeking other things, other unhealthy coping mechanisms. So to hear you talk about working out and being helpful, and like, it's awesome. Like, let's go keep sharing it. It's your suit up and show up. We love it. Yeah, it's great.
I like that, suit up and show up, and I do. And when I don't show up at the gym when I say I'm going to, like, I actually have people who care about me. They reach out. It's like, weird. You care about me? They're like, where are you? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm on my way. I'm just a little bit late, because I'm never late. Crazy what happens in sobriety. I'm never late. I've always got a plan. I probably plan too much. But yeah, so.
No, that's incredible. I think you said it all, and like, I think those are very powerful words you used. And, we appreciate you coming out this weekend and sharing your message and your story. Very brave of you. And I do think that, even if one person listens to this and, decides to get help, you did your job. So we appreciate it. And I guess we'll open it up for some Q&A now if anyone has any questions.
Hold on. Quick shout out to Bug. Everyone here will shout out Bug. Bug sleeping.
She's had a long day, man.
So if anyone has any questions for Ashley, myself, Andy, all three of us are, have our own journeys in recovery. So if you want to ask any of us, about our stuff or whatever it is, we're open and we're happy to answer any questions.
Ashley, how long was your stay at APM?
72 days from detox to, yeah.
The question was, how long was your stay at APN?
Like that was enough time for you?
I think it was perfect. We extended 20 days. If I were to go the 20 days prior, I don't think I would have been ready. Like I said before, when I was given that extension, I was brought into reality. Like, I have to leave this place at one point. So I started preparing. Of course I did, because I always prepare. I started preparing my exit plan, and, coming home to my husband, which was not pretty when I left. And that was one of the bigger things. How are we going to repair our relationship? Is this going to be awkward? And which it was for a little bit, because he had to get used to my new life or transformation, if you will. And we had to coincide. What we say is we wanted to walk on paths side by side, and we're doing that now, because I was somewhere over here and he's going this way. So I think I was absolutely ready. I told somebody today, one of the current clients, stay as long as you can. If finances warrant and your insurance warrant, stay as long as you can, because it's so important. It's just a page in your life. It's just a page, and your mental health and finding yourself and getting on that right path and getting it right is so important.
All right, Dan, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I guess just thank you again for everyone who came out this weekend. Thank you for everyone who's listening and took the time to listen to Ashley's story. We as a podcast really appreciate it. If you've liked what you listened to and you want to listen to other videos or watch other videos, you find those videos at apn.com/podcast. And if you want to communicate with us, feel free to send us an email at pod@apn.com.
Professional.
You could also find us on some social medias like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, the whole thing.
What about smashing?
And if you like the video, please go ahead, like the video, and smash the subscribe button. Thank you again to everyone.
Everyone tells us not to say smash the like button, but we're going to say it every episode.
But yeah, thank you again for everyone who came. Madison, Keith, thank you.
And thank you for having me.